tell you I think it's 13 million in the year 2045. If you ask the question, what did your Monet cost in 1930 and what does it cost today?
Welcome to today's show, the Ty Lopez Show. I'm here with a very special guest, Michael Saylor. Some would call him the king of Bitcoin. That's how I think of him. He's got a company worth over $100 billion. Took a $600 million company, made it worth $100 billion by strong conviction on Bitcoin. We're going to be talking about what Trump can do for the Bitcoin economy. Can Bitcoin save the world? Was Jamie Dimon right that Bitcoin's the biggest scam? Thanks for being on the show.
Happy to be here.
Well, one of my questions for you is just to start, I started really looking into crypto in 2016. I recorded a video about the two pizza story. And it went viral, got 50 million views on YouTube before YouTube.
They are both scams. The pizza story. What does it have to do with anything?
Took it down. Do you think people buy more out of FOMO? Or do you think humans are motivated, especially with Bitcoin, by logic, where they go, well, I see where this is going, there's a limited supply, it's anti-inflationary, you can be custodian of your own money, or you...
I can give you the answer to that. People buy for FOMO. Doesn't matter what he says.
I think the average buyer is just FOMO.
We say that Bitcoin is on a need-to-know basis. I think that people that discover Bitcoin, they discover it because they need to know about it. And so that need to know comes at different times for different individuals and different corporations and different jurisdictions. If you're living in hyperinflation in Argentina, then you have a need to know. So the Argentinians were some of the early Bitcoin adopters and big Bitcoin.
Yeah, because if they don't have the money to put food on the table, they have no savings, so they put their money in the Bitcoin. And next thing you know, a couple of days and they drop at 30%. They were better off with the inflation.
Advocates. If you live in Nigeria and the currency collapses, or Lebanon and the bank freezes your assets, you're on the need to know.
Those countries, they're gonna freeze the Bitcoin before they freeze their currency.
So normally it's people in struggling economies, they get it. And then a company that's well run, that's very successful, doesn't have a need to know. Very affluent on the Upper East Side of New York, don't necessarily have a need to know. They come a bit later. But when my company ran into travails and struggles during the COVID lockdowns of 2020, we had a need to know, and we started looking for a solution. So I would say that people adopt and embrace Bitcoin when they run into some challenge in their personal or professional life.
That is what happened to him. Don't believe what he's saying. You buy the Bitcoin, you're gonna lose big.
That causes them to open their mind and think, I need a new idea. I need to embrace a new way in order to move forward with life.
Yeah, this morning I tried to read biographies, and I was reading the autobiography of Charles Darwin, and he, at the last page of his autobiography, he said he thinks the reason he was successful is because he had unbounded patience on long contemplation of a single matter. He could think and focus on one thing. It seems like you're that guy with Bitcoin. Like, you've been thinking about it, living and breathing it. When was the first light in the brain where you go, do you remember it? Do you remember where you were? Like, people remember where they were when JFK was assassinated. Is there a moment you just remember the light bulb you had been contemplating and the light bulb just went, this is where I'm going to take my financial life?
I think in March of 2020, during the COVID panic and the lockdowns, the economy came to a grinding halt. Everybody went home. We had the 15 days to stop the spread. There was a lot of anxiety in the economy. And then we saw interest rates get taken to zero. And it's almost like the economy just stopped. I mean, traffic stopped, cruise ships stopped, airplanes stopped. Restaurants closed, hotels closed, interest rates went to zero.
Yeah, but people during the pandemic, they bought the Bitcoin because of FOMO. It's as simple as that.
And I was sitting in front of my pool in Miami Beach, and it was just dead calm. But I was watching CNBC, and in CNBC, at some point, it became clear that that if you actually were in Wall Street or you owned a bunch of financial assets, you're probably going to be okay. But if you're on Main Street and you're trying to actually do things like run a restaurant or a yoga salon, you were going to have a bad year. And so at that point I said, well, I have all this cash and it's worthless, like zero interest rates. And the central banker said, we're not even thinking about raising interest rates for 4 years. So you have a non-performing asset. And then I looked at the government basically printing money. I thought if we shut down the economy for 2 years, that's going to cost a lot of money, and that's going to get printed. And so I saw hyperinflation, coming at the end of those lockdowns, and I noticed my money was a melting ice cube. And I thought, well, I need to do something.
And the Bitcoin is not a melting ice cube. When one buys and within a day it dropped 20, 30, 40%, it's not an ice cube.
Something with the money before it becomes worth 40% less. And that's the point where I said to a friend of mine, so tell me about that Bitcoin thing again.
So to be clear, that's an interesting story, because I feel like the number one reason people don't get into crypto or anything is they think they're too late. But what you're saying is really you only had the aha moment 4 years ago.
I think when I was thinking about it, it was 4,000 or 5,000 a coin for Bitcoin, and when we started buying it in size, it was in the mid 9,000s and 10,000, 11,000, and it's 10x since then. But to be clear, the brilliant idea of Bitcoin is digital property. It's cyber Manhattan. I've created a city.
Based upon what he's making a statement that Bitcoin is cyber Manhattan? Based upon what?
In cyberspace that's 276 blocks wide, 276 blocks high, 276 blocks deep. You're buying 1/21 millionth of all the money that there's ever going to be in cyberspace. And
Bitcoin is not finite to 1/21th million when you buy a Bitcoin, because you can buy fractional shares. You can buy the Satoshi, and then you got a lot of derivative. You got papers. People are gonna borrow against it. It's not limited at all.
And one day, the 8 billion people are going to want to put some of their money there. And it's the most simple idea imaginable. Do you want to buy 1/21 millionth of all the money in the world for all of eternity? Like the product's going to be the same in 100 years, 500 years, 1,000 years?
The product is going to be the same. Why? He doesn't think that there is going to be a new technology. We already have the Trump coin now. I don't know, because it came out, I believe, yesterday. Now this is January 19th. Actually, Trump is making a live speech right now. This is the Trump's inauguration's eve today. And what prevents from another guy, just like Satoshi Nakamoto, what prevents another technology to be faster, better, the speed of transaction, the quantity of transactions, there is not such a scam like a Bitcoin? What prevents that technology from being a reality? Can be a new coin. And I also want to say that Bitcoin, the name of Bitcoin is misleading, because it's not a coin. You guys are not buying a coin, you're buying a string of numbers that it's nowhere, okay? And it's been used for all the wrong reasons, for money laundering, and it's very easy that there are gonna be a lot of charlatans talking about that. All the people that got in early, like he's one of them, trying to convince you guys to never sell your Bitcoin, to buy the Bitcoin. It is gonna skyrocket to 13 million. But all of this, he makes such a statements that don't have any base. There is no evidence of what he's saying, you know. And the Bitcoin, he says, is gonna be the same within 100 and 500 and 1,000 years. While in the reality, to me, the Bitcoin might not even be around 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now. I'm pretty sure, because people are gonna get tired of the same shit.
So think of it like, buying Manhattan in 1750. And
but it's not like buying Manhattan in 1750, because Manhattan was real. There was land, there was a lot of demand, a lot of people moving to the United States and going to New York, building houses, pay rent. You know what I mean? There was a lot of demand, and he doesn't have any evidence to make such a statement.
100 years late. And someone goes, you're 100 years late, the guy that's selling you the building paid less than you're going to pay. Aren't you afraid you're overpaying?
But it's not the same thing, because the philosophy behind the Bitcoin is pretty much the same as stock market traders. And that's why you see that the Bitcoin moves like the Nasdaq. In most cases, not always, but it's more volatile. When the Nasdaq is up 1%, the Bitcoin can be up 4 or 5%, but then the opposite. It's the same mentality. It's all about supply demand. There is a lot of trading, there is a lot of greediness in the market. And the people traded on technical. You can only trade on technicals. You gotta have the fundamentals. Like you buy a blue chip, the technical is important, but because it's backed by the fundamentals of that company. Bitcoin does not have any fundamentals. It's empty. Its intrinsic value is zero. Really, it's negative, because it costs us 300 grand to mine a Bitcoin in the United States, and it's trading now at 100 grand. So it's actually negative. And all of this for what? There is no need of this. I understand that the Bitcoin is the reward to solve a very complex mathematical equation. So in that case, mathematicians should be the richest men on the planet, but they're not. Or miners should be the richest man on the planet, but they are not, because they lose money. The whole thing is a house of cards. It doesn't matter if what is the exchange with the US dollar. It's trash and trash all the way through.
And it's like, well, I'm going to dump it to a guy in 1770 for more, and that's stupid, because you should buy it.
And all the people who did that with Enron, and all the people who did that with Lehman Brothers, and all the people who did that with long-term capital management, they were buying at a higher price, and then the stock collapsed. In a very short time, the stock collapsed 90, 95, 100%, and that's the very same thing that it's going to happen to his MicroStrategy scheme.
Every year from 1650 to today, and it's the greatest city in America. So why wouldn't you want to own 67 blocks of Manhattan? Just like why wouldn't you own 67 blocks of Bitcoin? So you're never going to be too late if you understand that.
Yeah, but he's trying to sell you this dream, this long-term, fantasy. But in the reality, the people who buy Bitcoin, they're buying it, they're trading it 24/7 to make a quick buck. And that's why it's so volatile. You can win. You buy 100 and it'll drop. You buy a 105 and it'll drop. It doesn't matter. Then it goes down. When it goes to 89, people are gonna sell by the bulk. If it reaches 89 grand a Bitcoin, it might all the way spiral down to 79, 69, 59. And what is a good re-entry point? You know what I mean?
that the future digital economy is going to be built on top of 21 million blocks of Bitcoin.
I remember in 2016 when I released this video, and it was fluctuating between 4 and 15,000. I found an old tweet I did, and it was at 14,000. And people were saying, "Oh, Ty, you're getting people slaughtered. They're buying at the top." And I said, if you believe in something, the reason you believe in it is because you believe there's no top. So, I said about 8 years ago.
To me, there is no top to the S&P 500. It's gonna be slow, okay? To me, there is no top to the Vanguard World ETF VT. To me, to that there is no top. Anything else which is a metal, oil, even a commodity, it could fluctuate. I'm not sure about that. And even more or less with the Bitcoin, which is the largest scam in human history.
Years ago, I said, my guess, I don't know if you remember when John McAfee made a bet. I think he said, if Bitcoin's not at 1 million by 2020, I'm going to cut my penis off. I told all my friends, never bet a body part on anything. but I said, I think it'll be at 250 grand by 2025, 2026. Part of the reason is the old hands have to flush out. I know people that got Bitcoin at $300, $1,000. As the rise comes to 100 grand, which are...
Yeah, but how many of these people really that bought it at $300 a Bitcoin actually held it up until 105 is today, I guess? How many people? Human nature is that they want a higher yield, and when the Bitcoin from $300 goes up to 600, a lot of those people, they already sold their Bitcoin, because actually I think a lot of people, they buy, they make 5-10% of their money and they sell it. There are very few people that can hold the Bitcoin for a very long time.
Recently hit, it just becomes such a big temptation. The old hands flush, push the price back down, but inevitably now you have a new hand of buyers that bought in at 100. They're not going to sell till it hits 200. So this kind of seesaw.
That's what I'm saying.
Do you think, because I feel like among smart people, the seesawing is the number one thing that people argue against Bitcoin. So I had a friend here in finance. He says, Ty, I see where you're going with Bitcoin. The reason I don't consider it as a currency is the currencies we trust in the world, they don't seesaw very much. The dollar is pegged somewhat. Now with Joe Biden it changed, but what's your counter argument to people?
Bitcoin is not a currency. The whole thing is a scam. It's not even a cryptocurrency. The word currency, delete it out of your dictionary when you're speaking about Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a speculation. It's a scam. Michael Saylor, first he calls it cryptocurrency, then he calls it digital gold, then he calls it digital asset, then he calls it digital property, then he calls it digital capital. He doesn't even know what it is. All it is, it's a software, it's a scam, it's a string of numbers, and very soon it's gonna be obsolete. And when that day comes, the Bitcoin is gonna crash so hard, from which it will never recover.
People say, yeah, Bitcoin's good, but it's too speculative. It moves in 1 year from 15,000 to 100,000. What's your counter?
I think the important thing is to understand it not as a digital currency, but as digital capital. Money decomposes into currency, which is the medium of exchange, like the peso, the ruble, or the dollar, or capital, which is a store of value, like a Monet painting.
But he doesn't have any evidence to make a statement that Bitcoin is digital capital and it's a storehold of value. It's got no evidence. It doesn't have any history. The Bitcoin, it's trading like this, not even 10 years. It doesn't have any history to be a storehold of value. I can say that about a property, a piece of real estate, which it can be a good store of value. It can be an edge against inflation. It depends, of course. It could be real estate, but a Bitcoin, it's not even. It's gonna be around 2 years from now. No one knows. It's such a speculative thing, and I don't even want to call it a speculative asset, because to me it's not even an asset. It's just a lie.
like a really nice penthouse in Manhattan, like a bar of gold, or like a Bitcoin. And so if you think of it as currency, you get really confused because you want to buy coffee with it. But the truth is, no currencies are good stores of value. You wouldn't want to hold $1 million of dollars or pesos or marks or francs or yen or anything for 100 years.
Right.
But, if you go and you ask the question, what did it cost for an acre of land in Manhattan in 1900? What did it cost for an acre of land in Palm Beach in 1900? I live in Miami Beach. The land that my house is on was $10,000 an acre in 1930. Now it's $20 million an acre.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
Yeah, but because there was a lot of inflation, real estate keeps up with inflation, nothing more than that. You can pull up the real estate prices adjusted for inflation, and pretty much it's a flat line. It doesn't mean that the Bitcoin is gonna do what real estate in South Beach did, or what real estate in Manhattan did. There was also a lot of demand of people moving to the United States in the turn of the century. You can do an example, you can make such an example without any evidence. I understand if Bitcoin was like Manhattan in 1900, he's got a point, but he doesn't have any evidence to make that link, to make a metaphor like that.
If you ask the question, what did your Monet cost in 1930 and what does it cost today? The point really is the people that bought Palm Beach or Hampton's real estate or Monet's or they want to buy Bitcoin.
Yeah, but the Monet is only worth whatever it's worth within the people who understand art. Between the people who have collections of art, of valuables. But if, like me, I don't buy art. It's like a fine wine. It's only worth money to people who drink wine. It's only worth something within that community, because it's like if I go to a casino and they give me chips, I exchange US dollar for chips. That chip is only worth something within the same casino. I can't go to a grocery store and buy anything with that chip. I gotta first convert it back into US dollar or euros. And the same thing now, the scam here too is that every time I need to make a purchase, I gotta change my Bitcoin for US dollars, and then I'm gonna run into a taxation. So the money that you bought a Bitcoin, it was already taxed. Then you gotta convert it back into US dollars, and you're gonna undergo a double taxation. So I really don't see the reason to do that. Not even to mention the stock exchange, or rather the coin exchange, or whatever you use in Coinbase. They're gonna charge you every transaction. The wallet company is gonna charge you every transaction. The IRS, I mean, it's just the capital gains. It's just a big lie.
It's not a 4-year. If you bought a Monet in 1913, and if you had to sell it in 1916 in the middle of World War I mean, maybe you sold it at a loss, but you're an idiot, right? Because 100 years later, it's going to be worth somewhere in the range of 100 to 1,000 times more money.
Yeah, but there is only one Monet. You know what I mean? This Bitcoin, it can very well be obsolete. They come out with a new technology, they come out with a better software, anything can happen, because in the reality there is nothing to it. There is nothing to it other than people buy for FOMO, hoping that the price is gonna go up. There is nothing to it. Like if I buy real estate and the price goes down, well, then the cap rate is gonna go up. I can rent it out, I can buy it for cheap, if you get a deal. And now your return on investment, or your cash on cash return, is gonna be better, because if you can buy at a low price, okay, and you can charge a premium rent, well, you can make a worth of the investment. But the Bitcoin, it doesn't write you a check, it doesn't pay you anything. You can look at it every day, you can stare at it, and it does nothing. Okay, I can also make an example of a high dividend stock where the price of the stock goes down. It can be appealing to dividend stock investors, because then the yield goes up. If you buy a stock that is yielding 4% a year, then that stock price is gonna drop a lot. Well, then now your yield on cost is gonna be 6, 7, 8, 9, 10% from when you bought it. But I can't make the same argument on a Bitcoin because it doesn't do anything. I mean,
so you should think of it as scarce, desirable property, something that a government can't make more of. I mean, the reason that Palm Beach real estate is valuable is because the government can't...
The value of the Bitcoin is not because it's a scarcity. Doesn't have anything to do with that, because I can come up with my own coin tomorrow and make it to 1 million, cap it at 1 million, and no one is gonna buy it. Anyone can come up with their own cryptocurrency, NFT. This is all a scam. It's all a big lie.
Can't make more beachfront in Palm Beach, and they can't. The reason that dead artists are more valuable than live artists is you don't want the artist to make any more paintings. You want the Vermeer to stop painting. You want Da Vinci to stop.
Yeah, but you can't make this argument with the technology. Bitcoin is only a technology, and there was a time that the radio was a new technology, television was a new technology. It's only a technology. Technologies get obsolete. There is no way around that, because you can always make it better. Okay, it's only a software. It's a string of numbers. It's a technology. Okay, and like all technologies, if you look at the QQQ, all the components of the QQQ from 20 years from now, from 30 years from now, or even the S&P 500, those companies constantly change, and actually the lifespan of Fortune 500 companies, it went from 30, 40 years to 5, 6, 7 years, and it's shortened. Because there is always going to be a new technology. This technology of the Bitcoin, of the Coinbase, of the wallets, it's got problems. It will be obsolete soon.
Painting. So you need a cap. It needs to be something which is scarce. It needs to be desirable. And Bitcoin happens to be the most desirable global capital asset. People are buying
for now is desirable
in Africa, or to buy a bunch of land in Siberia, or to haul a bunch of gold bars, in their car across a border, or to.
But it's not being used for this. It's being used by not only from people in Nigeria and Siberia. It's not being used for that. Let's be realistic. I've been to El Salvador. They use the Bitcoin and no one uses it. Even it's a legal tender. No one knows. It's too complicated. They use the US dollar in El Salvador. You know what I mean? This is just a big scam. And that's why the United States actually have the majority of the Bitcoin, followed by Brazil, I guess. But this is rich people. Those are rich people in the United States. They're trying to make a quick trade, a quick buck, pushing the prices high. But they don't buy for the reason that he's saying.
Worry about someone spilling coffee on their Van Gogh. It's like once you see it like that, you're like, okay, I kind of like the idea that I can hold $1 million worth of value on my phone, and I don't have to worry about someone spilling coffee on it. And if I needed to send it from
that no one spills coffee on it, and all the people who got hacked, all the crypto billionaires that got killed, all the scam, the money laundering, it goes and goes and goes. They can scam you like they want with the Bitcoin, and then you're trusting an app, Coinbase. With no disrespect, I have shares of Coinbase and MicroStrategy, but I know I can understand a scam from an investment, and this is a true scam. You have to be at the mercy of Coinbase, of the wallet. That you lose your key, you get hacked, you get scammed.
To Tokyo on Saturday afternoon in half an hour, I could do it. That's the way to think of it, Bitcoin.
Look, I can send money all over the planet within 2 seconds. Okay, you ever heard of Zelle? You ever heard of PayPal? You ever heard of Venmo? I can send money all over the planet, and I don't need the Bitcoin.
So on that note, that now you have this capital store, on a practical basis, for my friends that are new to the game, do you recommend that they buy Bitcoin on a centralized exchange, a Coinbase, a Crypto.com, a Binance, or are you a big fan of you have your own wallet, it's a device, you own it, you maybe put it in a safe deposit box, or you control it? A lot of people say, it ain't yours if you don't control the keys. What's your thought?
I think there are 3 reasonable ways to acquire Bitcoin, and the right way depends upon who you are, what stage of life you're in, where you live. Also, whether you're acquiring it for yourself, your family, or your company, or your government, or institution. And so, if you're an institutional investor and you're acquiring it for your charity, or your city, or your government, or your company, and you just want the economic exposure, you might just buy the spot ETF, and there are spot ETFs like IBIT from BlackRock or FBTC, and every country in the world, right? There are ETFs in Europe, and there are ETFs in Brazil, and there are ETFs in Germany and Australia and the like. And for some people, what they should hold is they should hold Bitcoin wrapped as a security. Now if you're a senior citizen and you just kind of want it in your retirement account or something, and you want to be invested 2% in it or 3% in it, in that particular case, that might also make sense, because you just pick up the phone, call your broker, and say, just buy me a bunch of this thing, and you put the phone down after 10 seconds, and it's done, and your bank, JP Morgan or Wells Fargo or whatever, Morgan Stanley, they just done it for you, and it took 10 seconds. Like, my 86-year-old father is not going to actually self-custody, change jurisdictions, move to another, country, and run in a hardware wallet. So for a group of people, that's the right call. For another group of people, they should buy the Bitcoin on an exchange that they trust, probably a regulated exchange. It depends on whether you're in London, or whether you're in
FTX. It was a regulated exchange.
France, or whether you're in Australia or Brazil or the US. Normally pick a regulated, trustworthy entity in whatever country that you have domicile. And then you buy Bitcoin, and you buy the commodity. And then I would say for many people, it's okay just to put it into cold storage or put it with a custodian they trust. Many people custody with Fidelity, some custody with Coinbase. There are large banks in Brazil like Banco Itaú. So there are other regulated custodians that people trust. If you've already got an account with them and you trust them, then that would be simple. Standard Chartered Bank is another example of a regulated custodian. And then there's a third group of people that would want to take self-custody. And if you're capable of handling your own, if you're an adult, I would say you should be probably more than 18. Maybe you should be less than 75. Not because I don't think senior citizens can do it. I just think that their eyesight's not that good. Right? Like, at some point, if your eyes aren't that good, you have a hard time reading the hardware wallet, and you struggle with that, then maybe you would think about it. But if you're pretty facile with it.
But he's making this argument that Bitcoin is going to be this long-term investment. You have it in self-custody or you give it to a custodian. But in the reality is that no one knows what's going to happen to the Bitcoin. I'm not against blockchain. I'm not against cryptocurrency. I believe that, of course, the natural evolution is that everything is going to be digital. Okay, but money is already digital. It's already, I can use my MasterCard and I can pay in every country in the world. I can pay anywhere. I understand that where he's going with this, but he's making like the Bitcoin is something that people are gonna hold for the family, for the kids, the grandkids in the next 500 years. Well, the reality is that you don't even know it's gonna be around this thing within 2, 3, 4, 5 years. You don't know because the price is gonna collapse sooner or later. Something is gonna happen, and people are gonna sell by the bulk. And again, the Bitcoin is never gonna recover. I'm pretty sure about this. I don't know. It's not if it's gonna happen, it's when. He's making those plans a long-term plans, but I mean, no one knows this volatile lie. It's gonna go away, and I hope it's gonna go away. And 5 years from now, we can look back. It was just a bad memory, and that's also when they're gonna lock him up.
Computer, and you're facile with a phone, and you're capable of managing your own assets. And if you have a need to, then you should take self-custody. And so another way to say is the more uncertain your future and the longer your future is, the more important it is for you to own Bitcoin and not own the security version of it. If you were sitting in Lebanon or you were in the middle of Africa, and my checklist would be, well, do you trust the bank? No. Do you trust the government? No. Do you trust the currency? No. Do you think you might need to change countries or cross the border with all your money? Yes. In that case, it's a no-brainer. You should have the Bitcoin in self-custody, or you should have it in a custodian that you trust outside of that country. But, at the point where you're like 85 years old and you're not leaving your living room, for the rest of your life, at that point, then probably you take a different view because you're different. And companies, like my company, MicroStrategy, we hold Bitcoin because we want to be able to move the Bitcoin between any custodian in the world or take self-custody. And when you do that as a commodity, there's no taxable event. So you're keeping optionality. If I needed to put it in London or I needed to move it between 100 different custodians, or if I wanted to take self-custody, I can do that without a taxable event. I wouldn't hold the security, because right now securities law in the U.S. and the treatment of Bitcoin ETFs is you would have to sell the ETF, take a taxable capital gain, and then move the cash and then repurchase somewhere else. And that's a inefficiency of the current market structure. It might be cured if we get to in-kind create and redemption of Bitcoin ETFs, but right now it's an inefficiency. So I think if you think you need to move the asset around, you're advantaged and you have better property rights holding the commodity, the pure property, rather than holding the security.
If you're not selling it and you're just transferring it, that's not, and you have it in custody. I always said, people would always say to me, my counter argument to people on Bitcoin in general was, I use it as a utility. For example, I do big giveaways on my social media. I have 7 million social media followers. One of the things I did at one stage, the early stage, like Mr. Beast, I did these big giveaways. And I would get people in India, I would get people in Pakistan win. And to wire somebody $300 in Pakistan is effectively impossible, even if you pull it off and your bank doesn't freeze it as fraud. The fees to the person in Pakistan receiving the money right now, I love Bitcoin because I can send somebody a payment. So to me, just to add on what you were saying,
and you couldn't send it with the US dollar.
There also is a utility to it. So on that note, do you think, like El Salvador, which has made $300 million in profit recently from their buying Bitcoin, do you see a day where Donald Trump has a U.S. reserve in Bitcoin?
I do, actually. I think that Bitcoin is emerging as the world's reserve capital network. It is the dominant capital network of the world. So the dollar is the world's reserve currency. And you recall, I said money is currency if it's short-term medium exchange. It's capital if it's long-term store of value. And if I wanted to send $1 billion from one point on the earth to the other, right? The choice is ship $1 billion of gold, move $1 billion building, or send Bitcoin, or send $1 billion of paintings. You can see paintings aren't fungible. They don't make good money. A building isn't portable. It doesn't make good money. Gold, gold failed as a capital network 400 years ago when the King of Spain tried to send a bunch of gold to the Netherlands to finance his army. It got blocked by Queen Elizabeth. She bankrupted the Spanish army, and that's why the Netherlands is Protestant and not Catholic today. So it's pretty obvious. Bitcoin is a great capital network, and it's a great capital asset. It makes sense for the U.S. to own it, because if the U.S. owns that capital network, then anybody that wants to sell their Russian real estate or their Chinese natural gas fields is going to buy Bitcoin. So if you know where everybody's going, if you know everybody in the rest of the world is going to Bitcoin, and if you know everybody in the 20th century is going to trade their 20th century assets for 21st century assets, you might as well buy a big chunk of the network so that when they get there, you're the beneficiary of it. And I think Trump is a pretty good business person, and this is an economic brilliant stroke. So I think that they get it, they understand it, and we will see the U.S. Move very, very aggressively into Bitcoin at some point in time.
Now, I want to step back for a second. My audience is very interested in high performers, and you're certainly...
The U.S., first of all, the U.S. already has a reserve strategy in Bitcoin. I don't really think we need any more of that. It would be better use of money to put it in productive assets like oil or anything else. But I also think that the United States really they need a strategic reserve. They got 36 trillion in debt, in deficit, and it's only growing. It's only snowballing. I think the last thing that it's putting the U.S. dollar into the scam.
Only one. You might be called the king of Bitcoin. I saw, by the way, congratulations. I saw your release that you bought about 21,000 Bitcoin last week or very recently. So what's a daily routine, or are you even a believer that some of your success comes from a certain daily routine? Do you have one? Do you think it's important? You're worth maybe $10 billion. Do you think a big part of your success has been a disciplined daily routine, or not so much?
I think a lot of different routines work for different people. It depends on your culture and where you live. But right now, my daily routine would be to be up with the sunlight. So when the sun rises, I'm moving. Make sure I start the day with a bit of exercise. Then study and absorb what's going on in the marketplace, and then start to engage. And I've got a bunch of business, projects and activities I'm always working on, and then I've got a bunch of communication. So I think that if you combine that with focus, I would say the principles of success are, focus and figure out what you're going to do. I think it's more important. The world wants you to be really good at something. It doesn't want you to be decent at 100 different things. And I think that, I don't think the world wants my opinion on the 99 other things. If you're not the foremost expert on the one thing, and if you're the top 0.1% on 100 things, well, that means there's like 10,000 people that have a better insight than you have. That makes you number 9,999 And the world is getting to the point where it really wants to go to the opinion of the top one, two, or it might take three opinions. Maybe it can deal with 3 or 4 opinions, and it's for war. If a nation has the majority of its assets in land, you can simply take the land. But if a nation has the majority of its assets in Bitcoin, no amount of violence will allow you to seize their property because it's in cyberspace. So when your property is...
Okay, so now everyone is gonna buy Bitcoin only for that reason, because they cannot take it from you. First of all, yeah, they can take it from you. And okay, so now nobody's gonna build a house, and nobody's gonna invest in real estate, in gold, in oil. No one is gonna start its own business, and no one is gonna cut hair, do nails, and no one is gonna work in construction, because everyone is gonna buy the Bitcoin because they cannot take it from you. What world is gonna be?
Is in your head or in your private possession. There's an incentive for hostile actors to negotiate with you. Whereas, if all your wealth was literally a bar of gold, I could just shoot you and take the bar of gold. I could even bomb your house and take the gold. The gold doesn't get destroyed. So I think that digital property is...
The Bitcoin is not gonna get destroyed. You don't even know this thing, what it's gonna do, you know what I mean? You can buy the Bitcoin at 100 grand a Bitcoin, and next thing you know, it's worth 30. You know what I mean? That is not destruction. It's already happened a lot of times. The Bitcoin is gonna go up a lot and it's gonna crash 50, 60, 70%, and then eventually it's gonna go back up again. But eventually it's gonna crash to where there are no buyers, and eventually it's not gonna recover for it, because there is nothing to it. There is not only this rush fueled by FOMO. I am not surprised that the Bitcoin can trade at any number. It does not change what I think of the Bitcoin. Actually, I wouldn't be surprised of any number, any US dollar amount that the Bitcoin is gonna trade, because it's fueled by FOMO. It's fueled by human stupidity. And like Einstein put it, there are only two things infinite: the universe and human stupidity. And I'm not sure about the first.
Is a much better, a more secure idea than physical property. I also think that there's $900 trillion of wealth in the world, and half of it is in assets people hold. They hold it for some utility, like they want to use the house or the boat or the warehouse. But the other half of the wealth is just store of value. People just want to preserve their capital for long periods of time without degradation. So Bitcoin's a $2 trillion asset class. There's 450
$2 trillion asset class is not very much. Just to put it in perspective, Apple market cap is 4 trillion, and that's only one company of the S&P 500. Now, it's a big company, but I mean, what is the stock market? It's much more, 4 trillion is the market cap of Apple. The stock market is way bigger than that. By a lot. This is not nothing. 2 trillion. Now it can go up, yeah, but it can also go to zero.
50 trillion of physical and financial assets that are in 20th century assets. Those assets are degrading due to war, due to inflation, due to entropy, due to chaos, due to competition, due to weather. The cost of that is like 3% a year. So 3% of 450 trillion is 13, 14 trillion dollars a year of just environmental destruction. So as you transform wealth from analog form and physical form to digital form, you avoid and eliminate a lot of misery and anxiety.
Yeah, but it's already digital. You don't need the Bitcoin because money is already digital. The US dollar is already digital. I can make a payment, I can make money, I can send money. I don't even have to touch any physical any US dollar bills. It's already digital. This transition doesn't have anything to do with the Bitcoin. We already have social media. We have different things online, assets that we didn't need the Bitcoin.
And tragedy. And so Bitcoin is solving the problem of just giving us a more efficient way to preserve our economic energy forever. And if you think about a family, if I say to you as the head of a household, you're financially secure, you have enough money to provide for your family now and for the next 4 generations, whatever they might need. And then I say, well, how does that make you feel? And the answer is, I can take the long view and I can plan for my grandchild's college education, and if I said to you, well, you've got all your money in the bank just froze your assets, you won't be able to get it out, I'm not sure, you're going to have to leave your house on Monday, and I don't know how you're going to eat, figure it out. Think about how that affects your mindset. And so I think that economic security has an impact on your mental health, your physical health, your psycho. Yeah.
And all the people who had the Bitcoin with FTX, where are they now? Same things. I mean, the same shit can happen with the Bitcoin too. I mean, he's trying to sell you a dream, a fantasy.
Yeah, your economic welfare, and then also your time horizon, and the really beautiful things in humanity. Whether they're Notre Dame or whether they're a park or whether they're a great scientific invention, they're made by people that were economically secure that could take a long view of things. And Bitcoin provides that foundation to build a better civilization.
Yeah, I was just reading all this news coming out about how big banks were just not giving people a bank account. People would wake up, their assets were frozen. I know a guy who came to my house about 5 years ago. Beautiful family, kids. He woke up one day and all his assets were frozen. He ended up killing himself. It's a very tragic story. And I tell people who have money, don't trust central governments completely with all your assets. They've been letting people down since the beginning of civilization. When you centralize, absolute power corrupts absolutely. So there's a little clip, I'm sure you've seen it. Jamie Dimon, CEO of one of the biggest banks in the world, he says, in his opinion, Bitcoin's a scam. It's a Ponzi scheme. It's a shell game. Yes, it's going up in value because you can convince somebody else to buy it. Or I think Charlie Munger also said, Bitcoin is rat poison. He calls it the greater sucker theory. Yeah, it goes up because you find a sucker dumber than you to buy it at a higher price. But eventually, they say the shell game will drop. What's your argument? Obviously, these are intelligent people who have made money. Why did they miss it? Why do smart people who have called many things correctly, why do they see Bitcoin and just go, oh, this is just a scam, there's no substance to it? What are they missing?
At some point in your life, you have a successful business, you're wealthy, you have succeeded in life, you've had a family, you've got respect, and it's inevitable in human condition that as you progress through your life cycle, you become more conservative, more comfortable in your ways, and more comfortable in your assumptions. I don't think you can, as I said, Bitcoin's on a need-to-know basis. You can't expect someone at the end of their career who's been successful with a different set of techniques and technologies and systems of thought to embrace this one. Jamie Dimon didn't invent Facebook either, right? And the people that, if you were to roll the clock back, there was electricity, and it used to be electricity people were the innovators, and then there's AT&T, but AT&T didn't invent Google. And and large banks in the U.S. aren't.
I'm getting tired.
It feels very, very good to be able to help people and for people to say you made a difference in my life, and I find that to be very motivational. It gets me up in the morning.
I don't doubt it.
With much power comes much responsibility, they say. What's your favorite social media platform now?
Keep in mind, like my long-term forecast for Bitcoin is it goes up 29% a year on average for the next 21 years. And so I look out to the year 20.
Yeah, but only because it went up 29% a year over the past 4 years. It doesn't mean that it's gonna keep doing that. Like it's been said, that the future performances are not guaranteed. Past performances are not guaranteed for future results, and that's the number one law of investing. You can't just buy. Like there are penny stocks that go up 50, 60, 70% and 100%, 1,000% a day. They can do it for 2-3 days. It doesn't mean that because they went up, they keep going up. Doesn't mean anything. This is the ABC of investing. I mean, if you guys believe into what it's saying, I mean, you deserve to lose everything.
45, and I think it's like, base case is 13 million a coin. And it could go faster, it could go slower, but when you think about that, you're like, well, every Bitcoin you sell is going to cost you $13 million. Or if you decide to go buy a Ferrari.
I don't understand where he gets those numbers. He pulls it out of the blue. He comes out with the statements that it's just misleading, and people are gonna buy into it, and then they're gonna lose a lot of money.
Or a sports car with 3 or 4 Bitcoin or 5, it's a $65 million Ferrari.
Yeah.
So think really hard. Do you want the Ferrari, which will be good, may get you a few dates and people think you're cool for the next few years, but would you rather have $65 million 20 years out? Because you can retire on that and live a very comfortable life. So I cling to my Bitcoin, You do not sell your Bitcoin.
Sell the chairs, sell the shoes, walk barefoot. So when's, in your mind, if you're a betting man, Bitcoin hits $1 million when?
He once was saying mortgage your house. I think he's gonna say it next. Sell everything that you got and buy the Bitcoin and never sell the Bitcoin. But I mean, what advice is mortgage your house? You have a house free and clear. You are not going to mortgage your house to buy the Bitcoin. That can be the dumbest thing, and it can be very well your financial end. You're gonna die financially there.
Yeah, it's difficult to give you a short-term forecast. So I'm not going to give you an exact date. I'll just tell you I think it's 13 million in the year 2045. I think it will grow between 30 and 60% a year for the next 5 to 10 years, and then I think it's growing 60% a year right now. I think it will decelerate to be growing 20% a year 21 years out, and so it could surge up, quite quickly over the next 4 years, and you would get there in 4 to 8 years. But it's very volatile. It takes a random path, and we can't be quite sure. So I think I would take a more open-minded view. I would just assume that it's going to keep grinding up. It'll surge up. It'll smash down. It'll do the serpentine thing. And the volatility is good because if it was straight line growing and everybody saw that it was very predictable, then a bunch of people richer than you that you don't like would just buy it all and you wouldn't be able to get any.
I like that. So the volatility is actual turning lemons into lemonade. It's like, I always say, you don't...
Yeah, but I can say the same thing about anything. I can say the same thing about house prices. They goes in fluctuation. I can say the same thing about the S&P 500, that when it drops, it's a good opportunity to buy. I can say that about, I mean, this is the concept of DCA, dollar cost average, to where you like something and you buy it with consistency. You might buy a little bit more when it drops a little bit more, or less if it's way up. But really, I mean, you can make the same statement about anything. It doesn't have to be the Bitcoin.
Don't want to find something that's easy because then everybody will do it. So it's not easy to buy Bitcoin when it's dropping, but that's actually your best protection from some genius sitting on 40 billion just buying it all up.
The volatility is a gift to the faithful. The volatility, for example, I started buying Bitcoin and it soared up to 66,000. It crashed down to 40,000. It zoomed up to 60,000 something again. It crashed down to 16,000. It came back up, and all the way it was very volatile and uncertain. And we were able to go from $250 million in Bitcoin to buying 25 billion to having 42 billion in Bitcoin. And we took our company from 600 million in enterprise value to more than 100 billion.
Yeah.
If Bitcoin had been predictable, if Bitcoin had just grown 30% or 60% consistently, 5% a month or something, then Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, Jamie Dimon, everybody in the world, Bill Gates, they all would have bought it. I wouldn't get any. I would have 1/25th as much. We wouldn't be a $100 billion company. We might be a $5 billion.
Look, those people, they will never buy Bitcoin. It doesn't matter what the price of Bitcoin is. This is your last lie because I'm done with this. If you guys want to buy the Bitcoin, feel free to do so. I have no dog in that fight, but be very careful and definitely don't do it on margin. Like Warren Buffett said, if you are smart, you don't use it, and if you are dumb, you have no business using it. And that's exactly what he's doing. His MicroStrategy companies, they're buying Bitcoin on leverage. They're raising money, they're selling equities, they're doing convertible notes to buy the Bitcoin. Is the last thing that you want to do with the Bitcoin and with anything else. And he deserves to be locked up. Sooner or later, he will get locked up. I'm pretty sure when the Bitcoin crashes, he's not gonna have the money to make those payments. He's not gonna issue more shares when the MicroStrategy stock price is $5. There is no way this can be successful.